So yeah, everybody's recorded. Everybody's kind of cool with that. Yep. So we're recording, and we'll get pretty started. So I want to say welcome and thank you everybody for joining the January PowerShell user group meeting. My name is Phil Bossman. I will be speaking today. We did a bunch of introductions and all that before, but today's topic is going to be event logs, or using event logs and searching it like a boss, because my name is Boss Man. So, hey man, you gotta mark it.
You would sit there.
We'll see.
I just it might be more like boss maybe.
Somebody's gotta make me a presenter.
Laying down the law.
There you go. We'll scale the screen. All right, so we're presenting, and how do I make it small? So what we're basically talking about today is Windows event logs and using PowerShell to advance or to help you with working with event logs. One of the what we'll always start with is back in when PowerShell first started, PowerShell version 2 and everything. They had a command called get-eventlog. So I'll just do a quick little. So whenever you're trying to do some discovery, you're trying to do some discovery, get help is always your friend. Okay. So this is one of the best places to start if you're trying to do a bunch of stuff with PowerShell. It gives you synopsis descriptions. So list the parameters, what you can use with it, and we will go from there. One of the good things you're kind of like trying to use like a 101 is also has examples. You can search by this as well. So go from there. So talking about event logs, what is event logs and that stuff. So when you're working with your Windows Event Viewer, this is the default place where Windows puts all its logs. There is an application log, security log, system log. That's what makes basically system security and application is what most people use at this stage. So you get errors and warnings and such. So most people, when they're doing Windows administration, they'll jump in here and this is your GUI monster. Okay, it's pretty powerful. You can do a bunch with it, but it's your GUI, and that's not why we're here. We're here to exploit the power of PowerShell. So it's a capital P power. Okay, so that's my other. Right. So what do we get when we use Windows get-eventlog? So let's use get-eventlog. We're going to just get event information, and we're going to say 20 machine. I delete that. So that too. Play that first time. There we go. So this is the output you typically get when you're working with those event logs. So you see roughly the same thing we just saw with the event events, but now we get some slightly more information. But is this really something that you can work with? Okay. So hey, we just got the newest 20 items. So you can get events directly from there, and hopefully that this is big enough people can see in the room, and it's big enough for remote. It's kind of a little bigger than I thought. So one of the other things you could do, we kind of looked when we did help, is we looked at all the different parameters that are available to you. So of course the log name that we talked about. There are parameters for before and after and get. So still we do the newest, but again, being PowerShell, we can say, hey, I don't want to actually type in that huge date time format and all that. I don't really care. I can do get date, I can specify the exact date itself. If we wrap it in parentheses, we can actually do some time with that, add days. You can play this game, and you can dynamically build out pieces like that. Okay, so you can do that and say, hey, give me the event logs that happened after the 3rd and before the 4th. Okay, so again, just as easy, there's all the events on my local computer that happened 2 days ago, but it's only informational events because that's what we asked for.
By default, how long does Windows keep event logs? Is there like a default time?
So Windows, there's a property of each event log, and it's based upon that. And so you can keep it forever as long as it will grow. So basically, it's a file that actually just grows. It's a log file. And so the default
is done by size. I think the default is to roll over, and it's like 3 or 5 megs.
So in the GUI,
default size.
with each log, you click on these properties, and you define what that is. So it overwrites the events as needed, and this is 32 megs. But in most organizations, we control that in different ways.
Yeah.
So at least on our servers, we control that size by the policy, and you can define it there and what it rolls to, and how much we keep. So certain logs we keep, and other ones. You'd also define what the actual file is.
Yeah.
You can make a backup of the logs. You can export them and save
Yes.
them if you want long term.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, you can back up the log itself. So that's the point, is that that is the log itself. And then one of the other things that we do as well is we redirect those logs to a different location. So you can do that as well. So it doesn't have to be on your C drive, on your system drive. You can put it on a D drive or some other drive as needed. But that's more like an event log thing, the event service. So with get-eventlog, there are parameters for before and after. So when we did before, one of the biggest things here is, hey, you get all the events, the system event logs, it just rolls and rolls and rolls because there's just so much. And that's why we go down to the idea that you can refine your search. So the whole point of this is, hey, you can get all this large amounts of data, but the beauty is to take some of these parameters and take some of these properties to refine what is in that search, so you can get more granular details. So in the get event log is instance ID. Well, that's the event ID. It's not the same thing. It is the same thing. So this is all event ID 0. So you can just as easily do that. Give me the last 20 application events that are ID 0, and then do the same thing. But one of the things that we need to always remember when we're doing PowerShell is that, hey, we have a list of, hey, these are 3 items. I see 5 properties here across here. Well, it's not just 5 properties. These are objects that are just defaulting out to the console in that fashion. And so we have get members. So there are other properties that are not actually displayed here. You get all the pieces that are there. You get machine names, you get the index, the entry type, data, a container that it happens to be in, the time it was generated, the time it was written. So all of that detail is available to you. You just need to pull it back out. Okay. One of the things that I want to bring up at this point is you may see stuff as you're doing some research and looking around for PowerShell or for working with event logs, and hey, I'm trying to get this particular event log. Well, get-eventlog, again, started way back in version 2. We'll get to get-winevent. You might even see we're going to actually get to get-winevent. There's a different command that gets the newer version of PowerShell. So with version PowerShell 3 and above, there'll be a get-winevent, which most everybody uses nowadays, but the original was get-eventlog, and as you look around on the internet, you may see stuff that still refers to get-eventlog, and then you just try and put it in there and it doesn't work just right. Well, understand there are 2 different commandments for that.
What's the advantage of get-winlog?
Huh?
What's the advantage of get-winlog? I know we're talking about event logs now.
Get-winevent.
Or winevent, sorry.
Get-winevent will do is the version 2.0 of get-eventlog. So the point here I'm going to show there is that get-eventlog will give you only just that list of logs there. So when you're dealing with the application and services logs and Windows, they introduced, I think it's with 2008 and above, that it now writes out a bunch of different, so many more different event logs. Different services write their own logs. As you can write your own, you can create your own log that you can write to, and you can build that in, but you can't access it using get-eventlog. You need to use get-winevent.
Also, there's nothing that get-event can do that get-winevent can't do. It's a superset, right?
Correct.
Just different syntax.
Correct. It's just different
syntax. Some people feel that a get-eventlog is an easier command.
Well, in some ways it is.
It is.
Newest before and after, I don't think they existed.
Right, and like you said, subset of logs. But for those logs, some people think that the old command is faster as well to retrieve data.
Much to look at.
Yeah, so it's like two different ways to skin a cat almost.
Yeah. So again, there's a list of all. This is what it was inside of there. So this is where I want to just talk through the whole idea of. So you're going to see me jumping around and kind of going through a bunch of stuff. So we do this in PowerShell. The reason we do this in PowerShell is to do potentially filtering or get more power out of the event log. So the fact that I said before is give me all the errors, or actually, yeah, I jumped ahead, but it still doesn't really matter. Give me all the errors, okay, and I want to group them all by event ID, and I want to sort by count. So what does that really give me? So now, going through my computer, give me all the errors, then I sort them by event log, and then, so by event ID, there are 673 errors that happen to be event ID 14. So this really doesn't give us any real value, but the idea is that if you understand the concept of we're dealing with objects, and objects have properties and everything, and we can use other tools within our PowerShell background, within our PowerShell toolkit, to then expand those parts. So just by getting the event log, now we can use group, now we can use sort, we can do some magic at that point. And so becomes a real big tool. Okay? So one of the other points too is we're going to do almost the exact same thing, and then we're going to send it out to a variable so that we can actually work with it. So now here, this is basically the events is that at that point. So now here is all the items that happen to be, so events is effectively an array of all the events. Then what I want to do is I want to actually figure out what this 174 is. So we can then figure out, hey, this is what that event log is. This is what that error is, until we can go at that point. I'm not sure why or that's any value, but the idea that you can use that and use PowerShell to extend beyond that. So here's another example of get event. I'm getting the applications, the errors, I sort by that. But now we're actually going to do some PowerShell fun. And we're going to give me the count, give me the name, and we're going to actually do some fun with, hey, we're going to define a new property called sources. We're going to take the group and we're going to put them all together. So let's see what we get.
You want to explain that expression maybe?
Yeah.
That could be a little confusing.
So it might be easier to understand at this point. So what we did is we took again everything we just had, and for every event ID, we grouped them together. Now in this case, the 1023 event appeared 51 times, but it was actually created by both Personalize and MSI installer. So what we did is we created a new property called sources, okay, and this is actually called a hash table. So property called name. So we define the name of the property, and then we define an expression of what that property is. So I take current group, and then I select out its source property of the group, and I only want the unique ones. I don't need, I don't need, 5 copies of MSI installer because course, there's going to be more than one. And then I just join them with a comma. So that's how I get a unique perf lib followed by a unique MSI installer. So it's a little bit of fun magic, but the idea that I can now figure out, well, how many different types of these of errors are there, and and who's contributing to those errors, perf lib and MSI installer. So, keep going. And again, because we're dealing straight with objects, we can just as easily pull out the event ID and say, give me everybody for errors, because we're dealing with errors. So we saw MSI installer, and we can, using this method, we can say, give me the 1024 events. This is not much different than what we just saw, but again, we're using PowerShell to expand what data we have, get those same events, but this time we're going to actually send it out to outgrid. So instead of inside the console, we're going to throw it out, and we're going to get a GUI representation of what it is. So if you're not familiar with what outgrid view is with Windows PowerShell, you can use outgrid view. PowerShell core is still doing some stuff to try and make something like that work. But now we can give you in a view that maybe would help you in parsing that data. So again, it's just another option we can play with.
The object returned from
What?
get event and get-winevent, are they the same object, or are they completely different?
They're different objects.
They have different properties, even though there's probably a one-to-one for.
There are different properties. They are different properties. They're discrete. Yep.
So let me clarify or add another point to the question of whether get-winevent and get-eventlog are the same. So get-winevent is the newer version 2.0, but the one piece that separates it from get-winevent, or get-eventlog rather, is like what's called the filter hash table. So essentially, you don't have to, if Phil goes get-eventlog everything, and then you pipe that to where object equals this, that actually is much slower than using a filter hash table on get-winevent. So it's the same thing with get-ADUser. ADUser allows you to filter something by name, by an employee ID, by a SAM account name, and then pipe the rest of the results out. With get-eventlog, you just get it all, and then you start filtering. So get-winevent is actually quicker, especially for remote computers. So if you're running a lot of event logs on more than one computer, your local machine, get-winevent is much quicker, easier to process remote events.
Do they use the same remoting technique?
Yes.
Which is not WinRM, it's.
I believe it's RM. I can verify here, but now the key thing to know is the filter hash table is on get-winevent.
I'm sure. So
that's huge.
thank you for introducing that, because that's the exact next topic. Hey, well, now that's basically all the kind of fun. That's the extent of all the fun that you can do with, get-winevent or get-eventlog, is that you're limited to just that. And you have to do all your filtering after. It's a good point. That's an expressed difference. You have to do all your filtering after. There's not much filtering in the beginning, so you get the whole thing. So that's kind of why you saw me at the top say, give me the newest 20, give me the newest 90, only give me just the parts that I need. When you move into get-winevent, when they built that, you have a lot more more properties that are available to you. Don't think I closed it, or I did close it. So again, the friend is help. There are 3 commands you should always know: get command, get help, and get member. So that's when you're working with PowerShell. So there again, we still saw the same thing with computer name, but we also now have control. We have filter hash table, which Jonathan was just referring to. We also have filter XPath and filter XML. And so we'll talk about both of those as we move on. It has the ability to list the logs, list the providers, and then we kind of do logs, max events is effectively kind of like the newest we kind of talked about. Okay, but then we can also say the oldest and stuff like that. So again, it's always a good idea to reference the help. So let's go back.
Bill?
Yep.
Have they incorporated any of the features functionality of the log viewer utility into this?
I don't.
There's a command line utility that you could use, and it would process any number of
Eventutil.exe. Is that what you're referencing?
I thought it was like log viewer, but you could process any number of different kinds of log files with this. And I was wondering if they've incorporated that functionality into PowerShell now.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
So as Mark was over there asking, you might be able to see that it's sitting here filtering and it's still spitting along. So just as before, when you say get when event, you can get the entire application log. And what we did, and my computer fan is like spinning like a beast trying to input all that. Come on. Cancel. Did I just kill my machine? Cancel. There we go. So it will give you everything in it as it can see. So like we just talked, we have the oldest, the newest, we have max events. So you should be, when you're working with, when you work with get-winevent or even get-eventlog, you should be using, a max number that you're dealing with. That's pretty much the best way to do it. But one of the things that you'll kind of quickly see is that, as you were talking about, they are different objects and they are represented in different ways as well. Because you see is actually grouping all the events as they come by their provider name. So that, hey, you can see, hey, these are Docker service events, and then, inventory service. And it puts them all, it groups them so you can see them slightly different. So it represents them as events differently because they are actually different objects. Okay? And so they do have different properties. Okay? So we have keyword display names, level, ID, which is its ID. So it is not effectively the same thing because the properties don't even match. But they are a one-for-one representation of what they are. So, but WinEvent is a superset, so there is more detail in WinEvent than there is in Eventlogs. Okay?
The Eventlog property, there's an analogous property in a WinEvent object.
Correct. These are event log records. And actually, I don't know. Event log. Oh, yeah, mine is. Log name, location. Is it max? No. Newest. So get event log responds back with log entries. That's the actual event type. It's a log entry. So it's not the same, but again, you have different properties, and you can certainly investigate from there. So one of the things that Jonathan just talked about is hash tables. Sorry, I really did for you. No, you're good. No, you jumped ahead. It's okay. Be sure to put you in timeout afterwards. Okay. So you can define a hash table, okay, and get more granular. The idea that I can now say that I want the application log, I want just MSI installers, and here's the same event ID we talked about before. So if we define this whole thing, and we're going to use, so we're going to define. Sorry. When you do this, I did this on my computer. I had a lot more screen real estate. Not 9, F8. So it goes a lot faster than it did before because what we're doing is we're telling the system itself, don't give me all of the application logs. And then give me the ID. That only give me 1024, only give me MSI installer. That does all that filtering at the engine level and only returns you back this part. So the only things that cross the pipeline are just what you've asked for. Okay? So when you're dealing with filter hash tables, okay, you can define any one of these. You can define the log name, provider name, path. So log name and provider name, you can do a partial. So give me everything that is, Microsoft, and then go from there. Okay? So long as that's been defined that way. All right? You can define the ID. So the ID that's the event ID. Level is actually critical, warning, error, informational. Those actually have index numbers. Start time and end time, well, that's, after or before. With event items, sometimes they're actually, I think they're always defined to have a user ID as to who defined the entry. Then you can actually parse the data itself within it. So those are all optionals for you.
String, like when you say Microsoft, you say Microsoft star. Is that what you mean? You define your
Yes.
hash table as the string Microsoft star.
Yes. You can say you could just as easily do MSI installer MSI dot star if there are multiple there.
Now,
Is it regex? You can use like carrots and dollar?
I'm pretty sure it's it's strictly a
A like, not a match.
it's a string comparison, I think. It's not a full regex.
Okay.
I don't believe it's a full regex.
Phil, I have a question for you.
Yep.
Everything in that hash table you just listed
Yep.
also match up to parameters on the get-winevent command, right? In other words, you could say get-winevent dash log name application.
Yes.
So the question is using the filter hash table with that hash table faster than if you just said get-winevent at event hash like you're passing a set of parameters?
No, because you can't get level, you can't get start time, you can't get other things. Every property isn't exposed to that get-winevent parameter.
Yes, correct.
Certain properties can only be exposed to that.
Right, yeah, so you would wrap it up into a hash table. Sorry. Now, so my previous answer is no. So there are not properties for all of these.
Right, I understand.
There is no property for user ID. Get-winevent minus user ID, no, there is no property for that.
Okay. So it's clearly two different mechanisms.
Correct.
Whatever is the filter hash table is activating versus if you're just using,
Yes.
log name, it's two completely different mechanisms and thus would have different speed implications.
Well, really just remotely.
Not because of speed itself, but because the filter it's using is different. The other one has no filter. Its filter is effectively star everything, and this one is now saying, give me a subset of.
And you're passing the remote machine saying, here's the algorithm to use to send back just the necessary stuff.
Right.
So you're only sending back this much stuff instead of this much stuff and then throwing away.
Right, and I understand that when you're piping it to a where clause. What I was asking is, if you're using the parameter log name on get-winevent, does that have the same actual implementation as if you're passing a filter hash table of log name
In other
application?
words, does it just pass that information as a small filter to the other end and the other end just?
Right.
Good question.
Yeah, I've done that before. Just a single property.
Yeah.
A single property of being.
Well, what I'm asking is,
Which is faster.
so the parameters on the get-winevent command use a different mechanism than the filter hash table uses.
So if you, like, in that event, since they're all since all three options are parameters, if you were to splat them instead of use Fisher, filter hash table, which is faster.
Yeah, and at this scale, there may be a difference, and I'm not sure, yeah, I'm not sure you'd find out. I never thought to look, and to be perfectly honest, I don't really care.
Right, no, that's fine.
No, I'll be brutally honest. Yeah, Laura.
Question for you. On a filter hash table, if in a future version of the OS, another property is returned that doesn't exist now, could that be used in the filter hash table?
Not at this stage, no, because
Okay.
that hash table has been defined, and it is. So
there's a limited
it would
number of
change. It
properties
would be a
that
breaking
exist.
change,
Okay.
and so most likely it would be something else. They
Okay.
wouldn't do it that way. I would assume that they wouldn't do it that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So we kind of talked about. It's kind of tough to see. So I think we defined before. Here's my hash table. I actually spit it out to MSI installer events. So I did that, and I threw it back out into an array. I can then use, if you're not, familiar with it, if you put square braces behind an array and you actually use a number, you index it. Arrays are always indexed off of 0. So this is actually the second item. So always remember that. It is the second item in the array. And then what I'm doing is format list. So now I'm going to say, give me what everything is inside of this. And you can kind of see at this point the properties as we're trying to scroll up. So the properties of this it has its message, it has your machine ID, there's your ID, your event ID, there's your provider. So all the parts that we kind of had before are there as well. And so just like any object, the idea is that there is that actually individual event itself. So here we are with events. When you're dealing with the fact that you can use an event record actually has another really cool property in that you can actually convert it to an XML. Okay? So that's what we're going to do very next, is we're going to actually take that second item and we're going to stick it back into an XML and kind of see what that is and why is that important to us. And so, okay, we just have an event. We have an XML now. So now we've left that individual event itself. So granted, the second item, okay, we've converted to an XML, and we've used this. We define a new variable, and this is actually called reflections. And so we're saying that this variable, we're going to actually cast it directly into an XML property, and PowerShell is going to say this is whatever we stick in there is going to be in an XML format. So now we have an object that we can reference just as an XML reference itself. So it is, kind of see, it is in that same form. Here, so XML, like outer XML. So there is the actual raw XML of what that event is. So in raw form. But hey, we can then dot notate the actual event itself. So here's all the details within the event itself, right here. So we can kind of now parse out. So the idea is that now, hey, now I have a way to get inside the event itself and actually do something. So I stuck it into a variable, and now I'm going to start parsing those variables. So now we're going to go into a little, if you're not familiar, we can come here, and we probably do that for each. And we'll do this too, format table, because that's best practice. So we're going to take our entire list of events, and for each event that we go through, we're going to actually cast it into an XML document, and then we're going to create a brand new PS custom object, and we're going to pull out the parts that we want. So we're going to say, hey, what's the app name, what's the GUID, and what's the error code for this particular event. And actually, these events are application error events. Okay, so if we do it that way with some PowerShell magic, we now have a list of all what happened to be events, what app it actually crashed or what app it was, what the GUID is, and the error code that happened on it. So now we can take those events and we can then put it into a CSV if we wanted to. We can do more stuff with it. So we can then, if we start playing with the event. So one of the points that I want to bring up too is that you'll see me do a bunch of this stuff, and I'm purposely leaving this in here, is that, hey, I got a bunch of events, and I just took out the first one and going, okay, this is what I want. Now I go, okay, take the first one, stick it into an XML. Okay, is this what I'm looking with? So now I'm using the console, I'm using PowerShell to get me the data back out. And going, okay, so if I get the single event XML, is that what I want? And then I went down the chain and figured out exactly what I wanted. So once I had, now I know what data I'm looking for. Well, now I can pull out the parts that I was looking for. So I then use the data that I grabbed here, and I built this, line 49 through 56 is I then, okay, so almost reproduce what I did up here, effectively reproduced it there, but then I built a custom object that I then spit out the end. So really the power inside of PowerShell is the fact that I can take my events in the form they are, generate new objects, effectively PS custom object or whatever object, and then go from there and build my own objects. And then note too is that there's also, this is really tough to do, that there's an entire different XML part. So I have the other parts, and you might notice that it was there. So all the other parts are still there as well.
So Phil,
Yeah.
David online caught wind of your little scrub data thing. So when you have a chance, he was curious as to what that's doing.
All right. So scrub data.
Yeah.
So scrub data is one of the challenges I came up with, or that I had here with doing this, is I wanted to get real data. And you'll notice that that the computer name is called .local. Whatever. So I'm actually pulling real data from my live environment and going, okay, well, because this is getting recorded, all right, well, I created a function that basically just scrubs all our corporate stuff from it. And so you'll see a bunch of places where I use scrub data. So if there's an opportunity for me to scrub out our corporate stuff, I do it. So that's really what it's all about. Because, well, the intention was not so much to, like, if we were just being this and just being broadcast and not being recorded, then I'd have no problems. We could show corporate, I don't know, because nobody's going to remember and da-da-da-da. But the fact that it's getting recorded, I wanted to take at least that opportunity to scrub some data if I could. You're gonna put some fuzzies all over the screen and scroll it up and down. We'll do some fuzzy scrubbing. Yeah. One of the good things is if you want some more details, Ashley McGowan, GoTPFE, did an awesome job. Here it is. Nope, not to find it. But we will have that link in there later. But I will. There he is. Did a bunch of good stuff with. There's a really good article. He kind of talked about the same kind of thing about parsing the pieces, and he talks about. He gives a bunch of good examples with using group policy. So this is also another good reference, and I wanted to just bring it up and talk about it. So we kind of talked about list providers. So he kind of talked about, I wanted to give before is, hey, what can you get out of, what are all the logs that you can pull from get-eventlog? Well, you got the list of 7. Well, we just did that, and it just scrolled right up the screen. I think there's like probably 190 something. There's tons of them. And then again, we can do that same thing. Here's the list of just stuff that talks about policies. So, there's a lot of details. Now that we're using get-winevent, we can get a lot more information out of event logs, out of the eventing system, just by doing that, just by moving to get-winevent. So list all possible event IDs and descriptions from a provider. So that does the same thing. So based upon what provider I have, will tell me all the event IDs that are coming out. And so you can kind of do some fun and dig into it. And so this is like really deep weeds, but I wanted to lay it out there. So we kind of talked about, this is a direct representation. Here's just the group policy, the operational things they could put in there. So you noticed before is we just called application. But here, it's Microsoft group policy operational. Just like if we go back down here, application, Microsoft, Windows, find the actual, so scroll. What was it, policy? So this guy, operational, and so everything in here, if we use, so the 5074, if we do this, and we'll get all 5074 logs. So again, it's that, if we use get-winevent, we can now access that event log and not just the application system that. So you have an opportunity to get more information using get-winevent. And you can dig more into that later on. That's provider. Close on these. All right. So you'll see some more bunch of stuff. So I think we did. We did some stuff with. Yeah, I think I jumped before. So again, we can get the entire application log, And again, because we're using get-winevent, it will just run and run and run until we're done. Or we get first 50 from that event. Now, we talked about get hash table, get filter hash table, or filter hash table as a parameter. Well, I don't use that very often, primarily because I use get XML, and let's talk about why. So, if you look at Eventlogs itself, okay, and if you click on, so let's actually click on details of, let's say, this event. I don't care. So this event, you click on its details, you notice this is the friendly name, but then we also have this thing called XML view. So all the event logs themselves, all the event entries are actually raw XML. So why can't I use XML to pull this data back? Just because it's not available to me, I can use XML to actually get the pieces I want. So the fact that with filter hash table, I was limited to event ID after start time. I was limited to that. But I can get more. I can refine that search even more by using XML. So let's do some examples there. Oh, so that was something to jump to. Well, one of the things, if you're using event viewers as well, there's this thing called filter. So you can do this whole nice GUI kind of thing. Here, I want just these. I want event ID, I don't know, let's try one. 4117. All right. And so now the event log, because I did only errors. And those are all informationals. So now I only see 4117 on my list. So what the heck just happened? But hey, look at this thing over here. We have this thing called XML. So I can now, so this GUI, Microsoft in their wisdom gave us an opportunity to say, hey, this is the XML that we're using to generate this data back there. So, all right, so I can just copy this out and I can put it into create a hash table, actually a here string. So this is effectively not the exact same one, but this is actually here, what's it doing? Non-informational within 7 days. So it does a bunch of stuff. I'm going to use the application log. I want level 1, 2, and 3, which is effectively critical, errors, and warnings. And we don't really care about much of this. This is some funky stuff in the background. But this says where the current time is less than 7 times, milliseconds. So this is how many milliseconds are in 7 days. So that's what is doing it. So you don't really care at some point. So if I define this, jeez, scroll so fast. So now I'm going to define my filter. So now here are, using that same filter, here is all of the, what was I looking for? Forget. These are all errors or warnings within 7 days on this computer. So now instead of using all that other stuff, I can now use XML to then parse it. So even better, I get some more granularity to define what I'm looking for. Well, we kind of talked in that same fashion where, hey, I can say this level, but we can do some fun with, hey, give me only these event IDs. So now we're going to reference the system log. We're going to say errors. We're going to say that. So all we need to do, redefine my XML filter.
By hand, or did you copy it out of the GUI?
So we're gonna kind of talk exactly that. So I use this to give me the base of it and figure out what I'm looking for. So this gives me the structure, the original structure, okay, as a template. And then we're going to kind of talk about what you might see in just a little bit as to where we're going from that.
There was a box on there to edit manually. That means you can edit in that window if you want?
Yes. Yes.
Does it have syntax checking and all that?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, it's not really syntax checking.
Well, I'll tell you there's enough left, and...
No, so if you put it like this, and you go, okay, it goes up. And actually, I don't know if that...
Yeah. So they just dropped it.
Let me put some garbage in here.
Never mind.
Let me put some wrong garbage. Hey, I get an invalid query, and I get no data returned back. So if you give it garbage, it will try and tell you that you have an invalid query. Just the same way as if you define this wrong, that it will do it that way. So this isn't going to run at this. We're not going to run this one. But the idea that, hey, so now I have a here string. It's actually wrapped in double quotes. So that means I can stick variables in here. Again, this is capital P PowerShell. Okay, we want to use this to our benefit. I want to define a here string on the fly based upon another variable I have ahead of it. So I can do the same thing. I can say, I can pre-populate the log and then change this at another time or pull this from somewhere else. I can say system, and you'll give me all interactive services from that log. And I think that's actually what we're doing here. Hey, give me the application log, define some random number or whatever the number I'm looking for, query my help there, and now I can on the fly. So there's no reason why I couldn't redefine event filter and rerun XML each time, and it's rebuilding the XML filter each time it runs through. Okay. So this is some of what I did. Again, I'm just parsing out stuff that's, you know, I'm scrubbing. But the whole point is that this is stuff that I use typically. So I would do this. I would use a couple of these that say, hey, I can define my single system variable. I can define a single server name. I can actually use some other query or something and give me partials of it. Or I can actually just build on the fly. You know, this actually 1 through 8. So there's an index number. So they just build the numbers. So server 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it gives me that. So now I have an array of the servers that I have. Well, again, using the same magic we did before, hey, give me all the servers, actually define what the current server is, go give me the event logs, throw that XML filter above, and I actually did that. So again, this is pre-staged information. So I'm not actually talking there anymore, but I can send it out to an XML to events. And so here is live data that was scrubbed. So what was this? I don't remember what this event was. So this is, I kind of wanted to put this in here too. This is stuff that I use on a normal basis. You'll see some of my stuff that I use on a daily basis. It looks like this, is that I'll come here and I'll leave this line in there and come here, F8. F8's my friend. Okay, because I come here, hey, give me the first one and give me just the message. Oh, well, that's what the actual message here. Here's the actual message from that single event, the first one. All right, that's really what I was looking for. And so, all right, so now of all the events that came back to me, I went and queried all those 9 servers, came back based upon that filter that we had. And so I come here, all right, so the reason I do this is going, hey, I find a server that's potentially having an issue or also is having some event. Well, now I can then set up my XML filter. I have my systems. I can easily refine what that system list is. And now I can come here, take all the events. Here's my machine ID. Here's my, all right, I can see that, hey, a bunch of servers are having this problem. It's not just one, 58, 57, 56. I don't think this is an issue, but it's just a random event. And then, hey, let me sort it by time created. Again, we're still in the same ones. I'm going to sort them, then I'm going to select the parts that I want, and then go from there. I can even sort and then just make the whole list itself. So this isn't really like some of it's practical, some of it's not, but the idea that if you're using one event and you're using PowerShell, you can get a lot of data from it. So the reason I typically do something like this is I just throw it out there, is that I can then see that, hey, whatever this event that I'm looking for is not just, oh, it's only on server 5. All right, well, now I'm looking at that kind of problem. I'm looking at that kind of event. I'm going, well, no, actually every single server has 1 or 2 of them. This might just be systematic noise in the environment. And I don't really care that whatever this event is happening, but it now gives me more of that information overall. So by getting those events and getting just the parts that I want, I don't have to go query the event. I don't have to log into 9 servers, go look at Windows events, scroll, yeah, it looks like I got one. Go to the next one, scroll, I got one. I don't have to do that. I can easily jump to every single one, build a filter, and go from there.
How many servers will you query at a time using this type of technique?
As many as I need. So I've done this before and literally queried my entire environment. It took a while, and you need to understand what you're doing so you don't crush the environment trying to pull that data back. And that's where, you really want to get good about filtering.
Really granular.
At that point, do you want to receive back 500 events per server out there? Or do you go, no, I don't want any of that. I only want to know if 2 events happened. And then the other part is, where do you do your filtering? Filter left, filter right, where do you want to do your filtering? Or do you want to do some aggregation on that server and just leave it there and then go pull it later? I've done that as well. So some of the work I've done is do all this filtering and then just dump it to a file that I'll go back and pick up.
Mm-hmm.
And so that we've done in the past too.
Real quick, there's a question out there. Can you
Yep.
filter based on content that's in the message of the log?
Yes. Yes, and we will, I think that's this one coming up. Yes, or it's in one of these. So yes. So you can build the event ID, and I think it's the next one. Yeah, it's the next one. So we're back in that same world of, so get-winevent, security logs. This is a particular ID I want. Only give me 100. It's grabbing some data. I think this is live. I think I can use this. Well, these are just login events. But why did I want to do this? So we kind of see what we did before. Again, you kind of see what I'm doing with, hey, I have a single event. There's my system log. And then I think at this point, what I wanted to do is show that depending upon the, if you go back to, if you look at that reference from Ashley McGone, he talks about every single event log, every single event provider and stuff has its own format and its own template. So just because you can write your own event logs and write your own, sources, you kind of see it referenced in that fashion. Is in the event viewer, it's defined as a source. Yeah, source. That's defined as sources. The idea is that you can put in your own parts. I don't know too if you see this on other. You may have seen it on some events. Is that it's there's no details here. It just says unknown.
Unknown source?
It's not that the unknown source is, but it can't represent the data properly because it's of an unknown source type. And you typically see that here. The description of this event is not valid because there is no provider for it. This is a perfect example. They haven't defined what this is, but it actually has a detail. So Windows, the event log system, doesn't have an accurate representation of what this is. So there's been a defined format, template, for the broker, for the Docker service, so that we see this nice, beautiful message. Okay, but what's inside of it here, that's what they define out, that's the defined function. But this event is just throwing out 2 pieces of data. It's just throwing these 2 pieces, and the event viewer, I don't know what this is, it's just here's the data. So that's what you would see in the message. But effectively, what was I trying to say here? Is that some types you'll get an event that has a type that just throws it back out as a hash.
I can explain that, and this is a really good example.
Okay.
The Logon, like the Logon events are really good because the message ID there, the message data that you're seeing is basically just think of it as a form letter that's out there. And all of these properties are values that get replaced. The user ID, the logon type, the domain, all of that stuff can vary system to system, but these are the values that get populated when the event fires. So that's what you're doing, is you're pulling that out and grabbing those events. The actual name and the data can vary by event types and the different providers, but this is a way to expose that in the search for it.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So the idea that at this point is, hey, here's the event type I'm looking for, and at this point I still want to take this data and put it into a form that I can then play with. So we can do that same fun magic that we did before, take our event, stick it into an XML, and then reference out the second entry, I just did a count, how I figured out which one. Hey, I want process name. I just did 1, 2, 3, counted. I just counted until that's the number I want. That's the index I want. That's the index I want. And then what we turn into, what we get back is, okay, so now I get this, my process, and that. So now I can then take this, just like another, any object that we work with in PowerShell, we can then take that and spit it back out. Wow, I'm so slow. I didn't realize I'm at 8 minutes to go. So we're going to speed this right up. You gotta tell me to speed up.
Remember today when you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna have enough content, guys. Be ready in case I can't fill an hour.
Yeah, be ready. Be ready. Anyway, I'm just talking trash. Anyway, so you can also find it online. Ashley McGlone did this part. So the idea that, hey, I had to manually go here and count the process I want, but again, we're dealing with PowerShell. We don't have to, we can go through this whole idea of, I'm going to go through all the properties that are there, I'm going to count them, and it's going to give me the name and the text. So using that exact same thing, exactly what we just did, so these same events, and it now gives me this whole event list in a view. So now I have a named property for each one of them. And I can then export this out and do other things with it if I needed to. Now, this is not really valuable overall, but the idea is that there is a mechanism to get me that. And I just grabbed some random event. Do you have to use the index? Or you have to use the index because effectively what you're doing is dealing with XML. So in this case, you have to use the index. So next thing, get computer, Microsoft log record count. What do we want to talk about here? We did the same thing. We want to reference a, my primary role is Citrix administration, so I deal a lot with RDS, and we deal with terminal services and stuff, so this was used there. I'm trying to think of what I was using. We're going to skip right over that. So somebody actually talked about or was asking about the idea of can we filter upon parts inside the message. So if you were able to then, we can kind of see down here. No. Let's do this. Filter, I think it's 1000. So application error. So this point. So here we go. So I want to go pull upon pieces inside there. I want to actually pull out that record. I want to say, hey, give me where that record. And actually, the way in which it's doing XPath, it's using XPath, so you can look up XPath to do the searches. That's why it's star any record inside system where system is level 2, where event ID equals that, and you can kind of see it back here. We're inside the event data, where event data, where the data value, where data is this. So it would match any, if WDM EDXE is any one of these. So it would match this record. So you then do some XPath fun in order to get your data at that point. So you can do it that way. So I've used this in the past to say, tell me again, what I've used this for is I predefine a bunch of these XPath queries, and then at that point I can then copy and paste them where I need to be, and I can easily use that, scroll down, give me my list of servers. I can use that over and over again, and I have basically an entire PowerShell script, just like a control script. Go get this chunk, run that. Go get this chunk, run that. Go check, run, check, and then jump around. And I've done this in the same thing. So this is the one. This one here is expressly defined as DWM, but there's no reason why I couldn't say, hey, define the property that I have, give me one, and go from there. ERP, no, we don't, I'm going to jump right over that. So the idea is that, hey, I can give you my ERP where, Excel, hey, why is Excel crashing on the server? So we actually had this recently, and go look in, hey, the server's working crazy. One, I don't know. And then you go look at the event log, going, look at all these applications, Excel's crashing. Well, what's happening with Excel? I don't know what's happening with Excel. And then lo and behold, find, well, it's been happening for 5 months, so that's not the problem. And you find out it's going across all the environments and some random DLL that, happens to be some plugin that it just keeps crashing Excel, but it's behind the scenes, it's throwing those errors. So that error I can absolutely ignore. So it helps me in that fashion to go discover that, hey, so give me all the application events that were not Excel. Well, now I can more easily do the reverse. Not just go find that. Well, go get me all of it, go give me all the events, and then parse out the parts that I don't want.
And real quick, to build on the question that was asked earlier, if you're searching specifically through the message, you have to do it through a where object. There's not a filter in get-winevent that would filter based on part of the message.
No. Okay, so yeah, that's closer to the question than no.
Well, you can. If you build the XPath query correctly, you can find it. It helps if you have a very well-structured provider that's giving that to you, because you're going to have to know how to build it. Otherwise, you're just going to get data and anything that could potentially have that value. So it makes it harder, but you certainly can.
Yeah, but it's done directly through the XPath. You'd have to build the XPath. Yeah. Sorry, not understanding. We're going to skip over some of this, and I'm going to jump to this one. So this is another example. I'm going to go to the top of this. Good example of what I've used. So the idea too, some events, this particular event, if this is a logon event, okay, but the event is actually, it needs to actually say the data inside the event is actually the GUID or the SID of the user. So again, I kind of just want to reference this out, is that, hey, this is a capital P PowerShell. We have power here. Hey, but I can easily, define the username. I can go get the SID, because I know how to do that. And now I have a variable that I can just inject into my XPath query to find the computer I want to query upon. And so that's just another example of how to build those XPath, filters. So you can use PowerShell to your benefit to build those on the fly. What's this one? Time. Warnings and errors that are critical. Another one. Just there's everything within that. Here's an example at this point. We're not going to run any of these because we're not live. But the idea that, all right, so give me all my servers. Give me, so this is effectively, we defined those XPaths above, and now I can use that same idea to, I see my stuff out to data. I take data, is that what I'm looking for? I can then sort by my time created. I select out the last 30. I'm going, is that really what I'm looking for? So I'm using some kind of pipeline, and I'm running these lines independently of each other. So I can then use PowerShell to its benefit to get me the parts that I'm looking for. And of course, then we can use data to out grid view, and I can do some fun and in a GUI form, and if I need to. Something similar before. Here again, we're doing effectively what we did before. Username, building a SID on the fly. This is a bunch of Citrix stuff. Give me my XenApp servers. So here again, we're using Citrix. We're using, PowerShell on the fly to dynamically give me all the servers in my XenApp environment. Okay, give me just the server names, so I can just execute the single line, and I get all my servers that are currently active right now. And so it builds on the fly, so that when I come down here to line 70 to actually execute this code, boom, now I'm doing it across my entire XenApp environment, not just a subset of it or a single server in that regard. So, Lars, you asked about doing things in parallel. I used the PowerShell module, the invoke parallel, which does things in parallel. So you don't have to do for each 1, 2, 3. So it does them in parallel. So it's a good thing. Kind of talked about it in the past.
That's the rambling cookie monster one?
Yep, Rambling Cookie Monster had it. So one of the other things I want to point out here is inside of this basically script block. We're defining the parameter, doing some verbose stuff. But the first thing we're doing is, again, we take the XPath. We're doing our filter. We're defining the last 50 logon events, log on and log off. So you kind of see at this point, once I then get all the events, and on the fly, I actually start building my own object on the fly. If it happens to be a 7001, I create a logon property, and I define it as the kind created. So effectively what I come out with is custom objects that define the username, computer that they're on, the time that this Windows, either a log on or log off happened, and then another property that happens to be filled in for my log on or happens to be log off. So you get this whole chart of that I have that is now, hey, who's logging in and who's logging off at what times. So you can then easily look at this little chart on the fly that's generated that says, hey, I can see that this person logged in at this time and logged off at that time based upon those events. So this is really taking it to the next level. It's really tough to do on here. So I just wanted to show it. So same kind of thing, give me my log on, log off events. This is
That's forensic, man. That's cool.
huh? Yeah.
Forensic. That's really cool.
So this is almost the exact same thing, but this is log on, disconnect, reconnect, and log off events. So again, we're just querying the security logs. We're using the security logs and just parsing from it. Yeah, log on events, and then we do exactly what we just did, but slightly different. So we see, again, I would live in a Citrix environment, so people log on, disconnect quite often, and reconnect their session, disconnect again, reconnect. So this is pretty valuable, that fashion, and we're doing the exact same thing. And then where I'm also inside of this custom object, I take my raw data. So if I can then stick it out and put it into apply XML, and then if I needed to actually get the raw security event log, I have it. I have not the event log, but the event itself. I just stick it right back into the custom object. So I have that option. Yeah, we're going to scroll right through most of this. It's pretty much done. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Again, I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time. I know everybody is busy. So we want to open it for questions, and glad I kind of jumped into it.
Are you able to share anything on this?
Most of it, yeah, it's been pulled out. Yes, I will post most of this online. So I'll post it into our GitHub. So it'll be a couple days for me to finish ripping out.
Comments?
Yeah.
Do you look at any Office 365 from a different meetup? Office 365 logs?
No. But I don't know. What's more of the question? Is it?
Well, these all seem to be local on two individual machines and not up on it's an Azure SharePoint. Under the covers, it's a SharePoint site, a SharePoint instance that people are using for Office 365, and they've got their own logs. And somebody actually questioned the person who was running the Office 365 meetup was talking about that headache, and I said you should come to the PowerShell user group
To play with that log? To play with those logs?
Yeah, to actually get information and preserve them, because they after 90 days that information is lost.
Oh, okay.
So her problem was lost log data.
Uh-huh. So she's now pulling those logs off ahead of that.
So that I don't know if and how she's solving the problem, but I thought when she described it that PowerShell would be
Yeah, sounds feasible. Yeah. Any other questions on the long one?
My biggest problem with, historically anyway, with Windows is, what log do you look for? I've got a problem with VM Connect, for example. Do I just go message equals or message like VM Connect? Is that what I should do?
Effectively, you could. It would take a little while, but you could, because I think you would have to, you effectively could, there's no reason why you couldn't just loop through all the logs that are available. So
Right.
just like you saw, here's the provider. If the log count is, you'd run through the first time to say, hey, are there any events in the event log? And then you'd want to do some rough looking. There's no reason to like look in the video driver, log if you're looking for a VM stuff.
It's probably quicker to Google stuff, to
Oh,
get,
yeah.
to get something to grab onto.
Correct.
If the internet's down, I mean, what do you do?
Yeah.
Well, I would just like to remind people, especially people who have come here for the first time or online for the first time, that Phil obviously has an expertise in this area. And that expertise comes from years of searching and building upon basics. So remember, if you watch this tonight, we went from 0 to 100 in literally an hour. And could be very overwhelming for people who are trying to get their feet wet. So what I would suggest is 2 basic commands: get-eventlog, get-winevent. Practice doing simple searches. When you're good at one, do the same searches at the other. Don't go down the filter hash, table path yet. Don't do the complex stuff, because what you're going to do is get yourself frustrated, and then you're going to end up going back to the GUI event log. Build your basic searches. When you get very comfortable with those, add on a layer to that, the things that Phil's starting to show here, because you see, as you layer and as you get more comfortable with these, you can become very complex very quick. But the idea is that when data comes back and it doesn't work out the way you expect, you need to understand what has been happening in order for you to correct the issue. And if you just jump right in, hey, Phil showed me this cool thing, I copied it all, I hit paste, and I just got a bunch of red. I don't know what to do. That's what I'm saying. If you're joining our group first time, we're always going to have stuff like this where it goes super deep. Sometimes it'll be a little bit more lighter. The idea is that these are all supposed to be idea starters and reference points. That's why we record them, so you can go back and look at them 150 times, and maybe one day you'll be a super search guy like Phil. And don't forget, Phil knew he was doing this presentation for 2 months. He got time to put this together and make it work exactly the way he wants. I'm sure he hit some roadblocks as well. You have to build up the fundamentals in order to do the advanced stuff. And the fundamentals only gets done well by doing it repeatedly so that you can do it in your sleep. Mm-hmm. So start with something that gives you confidence, then add on to it. Don't go right to the end of Phil's presentation and say, I'm going to do this great XPath search against 900 servers and get yourself fired, right? But that's my point. There's always going to be stuff that goes over our head at these comments, at these presentations. It's not to make anybody feel intimidated. Instead, to show you what you can do with practice and time. And they're all meant to be idea starters. So if it's your first time, don't get intimidated if Phil went super deep. It's really about showcasing things. These are not education classes like I go and I'm going to learn in an hour how to be an expert or even an intermediate. It's really to show you what you can do with time invested.
Yeah. And I hope that, I really took some time to try and, I've seen some presentations where they just, okay, well, here it is. But the idea that, hey, there's a reason why on the screen is like, first thing, you're giving out my application. And then I added, and I purposely write some stuff into my own code so that I do it, and you kind of see, I think I did it down here, is that, hey, you can see I did it. Give me the first one in the list. Now I'm gonna chunk this problem down into really small parts. And once I have this small part, well, now I know what I'm going to do with this one. And then, well, what do I do to get to the next line? The next line is, well, now how do I expand it to 2 of them? And then you kind of see here, hey, give me the first one, format list. Okay, now I know exactly what I have, this one item. Is this what I'm looking for? Is this not what I'm looking for? Well, what is it I'm looking for inside of here? And I kind of tried to talk about that too, is that I came in here and go, okay, well, which part of the data do I want? And at that point, well, effectively, you could have just taken it and just left it outside of XML and just give me the message. You could have done just that, and then just dump it to a CSV, and then now you're at that point. Now you're in Excel and playing with just like text searches at that point. If that helps you, that's all you need at the moment, and it's also exactly what you need at the moment. Because there are times when I don't do all this because that's not what I need. It's just whatever you need at the moment.
So that means you do use get-eventlog sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, you certainly don't do this because you use this now. So in that same fashion, so I did just that the other day. So I kind of tried to talk about this, is that, hey, these people are reporting these crashes, things are happening, and you come here and you're on this particular server, you come in here and go, hey, I come here, administrative events, I use it all the time. I'm going, hey, I'm just scrolling through all events. Hey, there's an error, application error. What is this application error? Oh, that's Excel. Well, what's the next one? Well, that one's DWVM. Oh, okay, maybe that's not that one. Keep going. And then, so then I then take that moment, and because I'm going, well, can I figure out how many of them are just this? Well, not easily in the GUI. Well, then I jump down to PowerShell so that I can get more detail on I can get detail and aggregate. But again, I don't know how to do that aggregate initially. I would then start exactly where I did started here. Give me one event. What part of that one event am I looking for? And then how do I then move to the next one? And then it's kind of repetitive in the fashion that we use this whole parsing of the for each and go through the loops. Effectively here's the for each, and then I build a single XML from that one, and then I just build another object from that one. So all little parts, individual discrete components, to then chain them together. And that's what I think is the beauty and the power of PowerShell, is the idea that it should be small little parts. You chain a bunch of small parts together in order to get the final product. And some things, hey, I want to put all these pieces, and it's a huge one-liner. Well, that may not be valuable to be this single one-liner. And the idea that, hey, it should be a one-liner with like 15 pipes in the middle. That's how I see it as a one-liner.
So before you made the comment, Google it, which is obviously many people do.
Yeah, as we did all the.
In my organization, I'm on a small server team, and I happen to be supposedly the PowerShell expert, and that is far from the truth. But on my team, people come to me for answers, yet I don't always know the answers, and I get frustrated because if I could solve someone else's problem, that's great. But when I have a problem, I don't have anybody to turn to. The point I'm trying to make is we have a PowerShell Slack channel for Raleigh, but the PowerShell Slack channel is a fantastic community. There's 500 plus people on there. Some of the guys in the chat today are active on that community. You literally can ask questions of Microsoft PFEs, experts in the field, and there is no animosity there. People are just happy to help. So if you are looking for resources, along with Google, along with the Microsoft Help documents that are awesome, the Microsoft Online Help Docs, you really should be in the PowerShell Slack community. There's a great community of people there that are willing to help, as long as you can get over your fear to ask a question.
Yeah, it's really easy to get there. It's slack.poshcode.org. And there's an invite. You click on it, invite. You'll get an email that says, hey, you're joined, and then done. So that's how you get on, is slack.poshcode.org. So Joel Bennett set it up, so it will automatically send you an invite, because Slack is invite only. Well, it just automatically invites you. So put in your email, you'll get an invite, and then you can join the channels as see fit. Raleigh has one.
Most of the groups have one, but there's also a help channel, a bridge channel. There's lots of channels
there, but you can just ask them.
And if you don't remember links, you can always email one of us. We'd be happy to invite anybody who wants to join.
Or ask inside of Meetup. Yeah. We're happy to pass you on. And I think we're kind of done. If you have any other questions or even other topics and kind of things that we want to talk about, I think we'd certainly, entertain it. And were there any other questions on the phone or the web?
So I don't know.